Hi folks, my name is Emmanuel John. Welcome to 12-Step Insights. Today we're going to be looking at the second step. Please, if you would, take care of some little business here. If you're on YouTube or Facebook or whatever, please like and share. If you're on YouTube, please subscribe. There should be a subscribe button over this side somewhere. It'll help to get the message out. These are free videos. If you're interested in buying one of the books, you can please go to addictioninthefamily.com. The first book I wrote was called Addiction Why They Use, a handbook for anyone who loves an alcoholic or addict. And the second one was called Addiction Am I Powerless? User's Guide to the Truth. Okay, it's a self-assessment guide. It's very helpful to go through. It's a relapse prevention guide, basically. When I wrote it, that was a big part of the process. But I wanted to get away from addict and alcoholic, and I wanted to focus more on powerlessness, because it is what the first step says. The first step says we admitted we were powerless over alcohol. It doesn't say we admitted we were not alcoholic or addict. So I thought, what is powerless? Let's take a look at that. Okay, so that's the first one. The video's in the YouTube page for that. So the second step, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves, is the overall solution. As mentioned in the video on the 12-step structure, the first step is the problem. We're powerless over alcohol, life's unmanageable. 2 is the solution, being restored to sanity via a power greater than ourselves. And if you work 3 through 11, at 3 you make a decision, turn your will and your life over, and then you work that process, do the steps, the house cleaning, the spiritual seeking, and you end up with a spiritual awakening and a life with sanity, hence the solution in the second step. Obviously, Bill was an alcoholic. Bill knew how alcoholics thought. It was one gift that he had. He knew how they would twist a word and bend a word and argue about the words over and over again. So he took great diligence to make sure that he got the right words when he used them. And so when I read his writings, I'm very aware of that, especially when it comes to the steps. There's a kind of a neat play on words that happens in the second step, and it says came to. Came to is indispensable, not just coming to like coming into the rooms, but came to as in waking up out of a stupor, out of an addicted haze and fog. Okay, so we have to come to first. As we come to believe. Some people say you have to come, then you have to come to, then you have to come to believe. Okay, so back in the 1980s, early 90s, there was a piece of paper that was on the literature tables, and it was called 12 Promises. Just like the steps were written, it was written with numbers in front of them, 1 through 12, not like you see them today. And the first one wasn't in the book. The first one was, we will attain and maintain sobriety. That's the first promise. Confused me a little bit because it wasn't in a book, and then they added it to this piece of paper, and then they took it away, and they went back to the steps or the promises as most people see them today. So I thought that was important. That was an important part of the process, the attaining and maintaining sobriety. That's the first thing you're going to have to learn, because unless you can attain and maintain sobriety, the steps really aren't going to do you much good. They don't carry a lot of weight. They don't get you discounts at the bar. Okay, the dope man don't care about them. Okay, so being clean, coming to, is indispensable. Attaining and maintaining your abstinence or sobriety is the first thing, the most important thing that you have to do. You hear it all the time. No matter what, don't use. No matter what, don't drink. No matter what, don't relapse. Don't go back to old behaviors. Okay, so. But with the process in the second step being the solution, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. We want to be sane. We come in unmanageable with a crazy life. We want sanity. So then how do you do it? You go to 3. We'll get to that in another video. But I want to hit on a couple things for you today. So attain and maintain sobriety is going to be really important. I think it is an actual part of this step just because of the way it says came to. I'm not saying Bill knew that, but it's very interesting. You have to be clean and sober if you want to find success in a spiritual program via the steps. It's indispensable. Doesn't mean that if you relapse, you should disappear and give up. Just keep trying. You will come to. You will eventually be able to be clean and sober, okay? So it doesn't say that we believe. It doesn't say we snap our finger and all of a sudden we believe now that God is going to restore me. It says we came to believe, which is a process. He's suggesting that it takes time and that it occurs over time and that we did it looking back over time, the people who had come to the solution already, we did it over time. It took time. We got it done. We came to believe that it was a higher power, that it was God that helped us do it, that it was the rooms that helped us do it, that it was the literature that helped us do it. We come to believe that after a while. In AA, there's a lot of people, and they want to work their second step. And if you want to work your second step, I got an idea for you. There's a book in Alcoholics Anonymous called Came to Believe. You might want to check it out. It used to be, they changed the color book. It used to be white and blue, and then they made it like bright red, like this really bright red. So like you could see it and find it, that it was important. So I believe that Alcoholics Anonymous and the founders believed that coming to believe was a part of the process, because most people who come in the rooms are atheists, agnostics. They're hurt. They're mad at this thing that used to be called God, or they've been given some idea of a God that's different than their own. One of the things, the tools that we used to use back in the 80s, where a person would come in and say, well, what is a higher power? How do I get a higher power of my own? What's this higher power? I don't believe in their God. I don't believe in it. So there used to be an old process that they would instruct people to do. And what they would say is, take a piece of paper, just any kind of paper, draw a line down the middle of the paper. On the left side of the paper, put everything they ever told you God was. God was all-knowing, omnipotent, all-powerful, kind of like the Santa Claus God. He knows when you've been good or bad. All those things that anyone ever told you to put on the left side of the piece of paper, okay? So over here, we're going to have that. And then on the right-hand side of the paper, on the right-hand side of the list, you put anything that you would want your God to be, any way you want it, okay? So what does that mean? It's like most people aren't even going to know how to start. How do you start, right? So, any way you want, really. Your God can be any God you want it to be. It can be an existing God. It can be one you made up in your head. I heard a guy say one time, well, what kind of higher power did you pick? And a gentleman said to him, my God likes loud rock and roll music, likes fast cars, and likes girls. Okay? And of course, the newcomer looks at him stunned and goes, what are you talking about? Like, can I have one of those? I'll take a higher power like that. But whatever you want, you put whatever you want, whatever your conception of it, you put that on the right-hand side of the paper. And then what you do is you take that piece of paper, you tear it down the middle and throw their stuff away. That's your higher power. Anything you want it to be. It could be a tree in your backyard if that's what you want it to be. Anything you want it to be. But you have got to come to believe in a very important part. That higher power, that thing that you choose to be your higher power, wants you to be happy and comfortable and successful and whole. Okay? So we have to come to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sin. It sounds like a long trip, and it is. And what is sanity? Sobriety originally had nothing at all to do with alcohol. Sobriety, its original definition, was of right mind. So it wasn't that you were sober when you weren't drunk. It was that you weren't sober when you were drunk. Does that make sense? It wasn't that you were drunk then sober. It's that you're sober, but when you're drinking, you lose sober. Okay? So sobriety is of right mind. It's unclouded, unaltered, unaffected by a chemical. People get more jovial, they get more obnoxious, they get more quiet. It changes you. So when a chemical alters you, that's not really you. Okay? So we have to be clear. We have to have some focus of something, because that's what the third step is going to say. You're going to turn your will and your life over to that thing. So hopefully it'll love you. One of the things that will happen for you as you're going through this process is that you will see results. You will see the effect of working with the higher power. How? Well, you go home one night and you start with a simple one. God, please take away my desire to have a drink or drug. Please take away my desire to shop. Please take away my obsession with my alcoholic. Okay? So you ask. And then one day, week, month, whatever later, you realize you haven't been doing what you were doing before. That you lost the desire. And then you have some research. Then you have some evidence based on your research that there is a power greater than yourself and that he is working in my life or our lives. Okay? Do the research. Bill Wilson said it a bunch of times. Do the research. See if there's a higher power. Try a game, if you want to call it that. Do a test to see if God does for you what you were hoping for, or what you needed, gave you what you needed. Not what you wanted. It's not Christmas. Okay? And back to this idea of a lot of newcomers being atheist or agnostic. I was talking with a young man one time, and he said, I just can't believe in a power greater than me. I don't believe that there's a power greater than me. I just don't believe it. And I stopped him and I said, what are you talking about? This guy was an opiate heroin addict. I said, what are you talking about? You don't believe in a power greater than yourself. He said, well, I'm not willing to turn my life over to all this thing that I don't even know is there. He said it just sounds silly to me. And I said, you've turned your entire life over to a chemical that's more powerful than you. You gave everything to that chemical, not just prayers that before you went to bed at night, not just positive thinking during the day or trying to be nice. You gave every penny you had. You took money from your mother's wallet, your grandmother. You lied. You slept on the street. You gave up your house. You gave up your job. You gave up your relationship. I told him, I promise you that a capital P power, and a power greater, a higher power, not a lower power, but a higher power is not going to ask that much of you. The program's not suggesting it will. But the drug asked everything of you. So when people tell me they don't believe in a power greater than themselves, I say, well, you don't believe in a happy or nice power greater than you, but you certainly believe in powers greater than you. The judge is a power greater than you. The law, jail, is a power greater than you. Your boss, when he fires you and takes away your income, is a power greater than you. The IRS, trust me, is a power greater than you. So there are definitely powers greater than us. We want to pick a higher power, not a lower power. There are lots of powers. Our friends are powers. We talked about this in the first step. Our family is power. There are lots of different kinds of power. But we're talking about a power greater than us. Something that can do what I can't do. Okay? And what can I do? I can't find sanity. Right? We can't find sanity. That's why people come to the program. They are losing their minds. They're at their wits' end. Most of them ready for death, some praying for death, some wishing death, some actually attempting to commit suicide. So that's a pretty big sacrifice, and the steps aren't going to ask you for that. There is one more aspect to this step that I would like to add, and that has to do with sanity. Obviously, one of the most popular definitions of insanity that people in 12-step programs operate from was actually written by or spoken by Albert Einstein, who was actually a mathematician. He was not a psychologist in any form, so he really wasn't educated to diagnose sanity. But what he suggested sanity or insanity was doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Now, that's a pretty common aspect of insanity, but it's not really a complete aspect of what insanity is, or what Bill Wilson was probably operating from at the time when he wrote this. The old school thought on insanity was that there are two types of mental health concerns or issues. One is psychosis and one is neuroses. This was back in the day. So you had your neurotics and you had your psychotics. Now, there's an old saying that they used to use to differentiate between the two, and they would say that a psychotic thinks 1 and 1 is 3. He can tell you how the government conspired in order to collect more taxes, that the numbers used to be 1, 3, 2, 4, 5, but because the government thought they could make more money, they changed it to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so really it's 1, 3, 2. So a psychotic believes things to be true that are not true. That is psychosis. It's a bit of a delusion. Something exists that doesn't exist. They believe it with all their heart. Maybe Jesus calls them on the phone every day at 5 o'clock just to chat. Okay? So believing something to be true that is not true. Well, the old saying says, a psychotic believes that 1 and 1 is 3. A neurotic knows 1 and 1 is 2, but it bothers him. So those are the differences. One is knowing reality, but not liking it and being discomforted by it. And the other one is not knowing reality and believing it to be so. What Bill Wilson was actually talking about in the second step was the type of insanity where a person believes something to be true that is not true. I can prove to you that you may have actually struggled with the more psychosis brand of insanity than the neurosis brand, which many people want to sort of jump on that bandwagon and say, oh, I'm neurotic. So have you ever believed something to be true that is not true? Think about that for a minute. If you are sober today, if you've been sober for a month and you're happy, or a year and you're happy, think back. You once believed with every fiber of your being that life could not be happy without a chemical in it, that you would not be okay without having your chemicals, and God, that you could never go for a month without a chemical. So you believed something to be true that was not true at all. You believed with every fiber of your being that you had to have drugs or alcohol in your life to be okay and happy. And you find out the inverse is actually true, that you're actually happy without the drugs and without the chemicals. That's a form of psychosis. That is the insanity that Bill Wilson talked about. Not some light form where you're just bothered by things, but an actual disturbance of your ability to perceive and conceive of reality as it actually is. No one needs a chemical to be okay and alive. That's a delusion, okay? So when we're talking about insanity in the second step, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about believing something to be true that is not true. Some people suggest that we can extrapolate this and take it a little bit further. If you had a mind that you could not rely on to give you an accurate vision of the world, meaning that you were disturbed and distorted, that you get sober, and then a year later when you are sober you decide you want to use again, that you're now relying on the mind that has convinced itself that it used to be delusional, then it got itself together. Now it's believing that the current together state is delusional as well. Okay, so which one is right? Was I crazy and then thought I was crazy before and now I'm not, but now at this time I want to use again? So the person who thought he wasn't crazy for a while but realized he was, now thinks he's got it all figured out. That's why people in the programs often suggest that you talk to someone else about it, that if you're thinking about using that, you call someone else. It's simple. The mind of the addicted person can't be relied upon to be telling it the truth. That's the insanity that the steps hope to restore you from. People ask, what are you willing to trade? Some sponsors might ask, God's going to do this for you. A higher power is going to do this for you. What are you willing to give up? Cursing, smoking, cussing, lying. What are you willing to give up to be happy, content, and free? Most people watching this, hopefully, have met people in recovery who are happy. Their lives aren't perfect, but they're happy. They're grateful. They get up often and look at the sunrise and watch the sunrise and look at the leaves in a different way than they ever did before. Happy, comfortable people. One last thing that I want to talk about is how people in the programs today are younger than they were in the 1940s. I don't think Bill Wilson ever dreamed that there would be people as young as there are today in the 12-step programs of AA and NA and all the others, OA, Marijuana Anonymous, whatever, Cocaine Anonymous. He never dreamed it. It's amazing that there are. So for old timers, their sanity is about being restored to sanity. So maybe they once had their life and their wife and their kids and everything was going good with the job and everything. They had a life. And so they are being restored to sanity. It's hard to be restored to sanity if we never have it. If we grew up in a crazy home with crazy people and it was never okay and we started using very early, we never developed a sane life, a happy, comfortable life. So we can't be really restored to it. So for young people, we might have to find out how to have sanity in our lives. And the best way to find that is looking at other people. A lot of times when people suggest how do you get a sponsor, they say find someone who has what you want, who's worked the 12 steps. Okay, has what you want. What does that mean? I don't think it's the guy with the really nice Mercedes and the big mansion or the pretty wife. I think it's about the guy who's just happy every day and loves people and takes care of himself and enjoys himself and people want to be around him, you know, and he has trust in his life and things like that. That to me is what sanity in programs reference is all about. They didn't know sanity or insanity like we know it today. Half the diagnosis that we hear about today didn't even exist, or they had different names for them back in the day, back in those times. And they were coming out of a depression. First World War, they were just getting over it. They were now in Prohibition, so they were trying to be drunks during Prohibition. And they were about ready to go into the Second World War. And they were going to have to do it sober. They were going to stay sober through Pearl Harbor and all of the crazy things that happened then. So there is a difference about being restored and finding it. And it's really important, if you're young and you're in the rooms, to find people who have that. Some of the people your age, even though they might have a year or two, they're still finding it, okay? They have to, it takes a long time to know what sanity is. And as Sigmund Freud suggested, we have these things called defense mechanisms, defects of character, some people call it. But our defense mechanisms, like denial, that I can't handle that, I didn't do that, I'm not like that, that's not me, I never did that. It's because Freud said, that we have defense mechanisms because we can't handle. Defense mechanisms insulate us from the truth. Coming to believe that a power greater than yourself could restore you to sanity is about finding that comfort. It's about finding that what a real life is. Finding joy in getting up and driving to a job every day and coming home and having hobbies and friends and sports and learning how to take care of yourself. That's sanity as well. So that's the second step. I hope you got something out of it. There's a lot of material there. The first step is the problem. The second step identifies the solution. So what is 3 through 11 going to do? It's going to be a process of us coming to believe and being restored by a higher power to a way of living that is comfortable and good and wanted and desired. Over here on this side, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put up a list of some tasks that people did when they were working their second step. I did a research project with the University of Maryland quite a few years ago now, 20 years ago almost. And I looked at what is successful sobriety. I included people with 5 or more years of recovery with an average length of 17.6 years of recovery. And I asked them, what did you do for your first step? What did you do for your second step? How long did you do it? How long were you sober when you did this step? How long were you sober when you finished this step? How many sponsors did you have? When did you get your first sponsor? It's all kind of questions like that. So the list that you see is about just some of the tasks that they did. Ask your sponsor. Don't do what your sponsor thinks you should do. Do what your sponsor says he did. When you sponsor someone else, we don't make up something new for them. If it worked for you, you tell them what worked for you, okay? So that would sound sane, right? It's a process and it takes a long time and it's not a race. Don't let anybody tell you that it is. You want to do them fast, fine, do them fast. I can tell you, having worked in the field for 35 years, you'll just end up doing them again. That's fine too, if that's what you need to do to get you through the night. It's not a rush. Do them thoroughly. That's the thing that's suggested, honest and thorough. So, hope that helps. Do me a favor again, push those little buttons, please share, please subscribe, come back and see the rest of the videos. I have a lot more information and insights, and we'll just keep going at it, and I hope you keep at it too. Thanks, and take care of yourself.